All right. Well, we have made it to our final presenter of the afternoon. We are happy that we have George Abraham here. He's going to share improving personal productivity using consumer Gen AI tools. And George, we are very excited to hear what you have planned for us. So I'm going to stop my sharing so that you can share and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. So I do have allergies, so I might cough a couple of times in the middle. I'm going to share two screens. One is a PowerPoint, and the other one is a browser in which I will run a bunch of demonstrations. That's what here, let's go with this one. And I've flogged this version of this presentation about 100 times around South Carolina, so I do apologize if you hear my poor jokes again. Um, but what we've kind of witnessed, at least in the last 15 months now, is just an explosion of tools in this space. And some of the tools are extremely narrow. This is what I'm going to do as far as a tool goes, maybe generate images, maybe generate video, and that's all. But then there are some which are very general purpose. They will pretty much do anything as far as a mode goes of answering you. So if you ask it to generate a text, it'll do that. If you ask it to generate a slideshow, it'll do that. So it's kind of varied how the various tools are marketed to us. Um, so what I'm going to talk about today, basically these kind of generative AI tools that we can use in our own professional or personal life to increase our productivity. And just like Dr. Miller mentioned before, I've used these like considerably. And sorry, Mimi, I haven't really cited in a lot of the things that I've used that I've actually used this. But I'll give you some examples of how I've used them, even in our interactions, OIT's interactions with you around the college. Here's like a categorization of these tools, and it's a fairly dense slide. Let me just start at the top there. Your general purpose tools are the top three, and you've heard about these kind of ad nauseum from the media over the last 15 months. ChatGPT is the granddaddy of them all, came out first and kind of caught the public's imagination. The company OpenAI that's behind it has a bunch of other tools, and they consistently bring out pretty much, I would say, best in class tools for text and audio, video, you name it, even code. Gemini is Google's latest brand name for Bard, which died an ignominious death and now has been resurrected as this new name. I would say that Gemini is quite good, especially because Google's really worked into it the ability to search the World Wide Web and give you good answers based on that. Claude is made by a few folks that jumped out of OpenAI because they were too scared about what ChatGPT is doing as far as safety of AI is concerned. And so they built this tool called Claude. They call it a safe AI. And it's very good. The latest iteration of Claude is called Claude 3. And it does really good things, especially around data and especially around text pattern matching. Tons of tools, by the way, that do images. I've just listed a few of them here. You might be using other ones in your personal life, like Leonardo or whatever. And feel free to put those in the chat for other folks to fool around with as well, especially if they're free, because by God, it's tiring paying yet another $20 bill to yet another tool. So if there are any free tools out there, feel free to put them there. For code, the latest one that has come out, and all of these do code well in some ways or the other, but the latest tool that came out recently is this one called Devin. And that I think came out about a month or so ago. And the reviews have been fantastic. This thing apparently is almost a junior software developer. And if you use it as an assistant, you and and Devin together can be a really good coder. Really, really cool. Speech and audio, here are some of the ones that are out there. The newest ones on the market are called Suno and Udio. Literally put in a prompt that says, hey, I want to listen to, I don't know, Korn in the style of Willie Nelson. And it will put out a tune that sounds like corn lyrics sung by Willie Nelson. And fantastic, like, and it'll put together a playlist around it. That's the weirdest part, with the appropriate lyrics and all that. All the IP considerations around this are still up for grabs. I expect the courts are going to be fairly busy over the rest of the year. And yeah, I'll try and put in, I actually have a link to Udio here, and I can play that over and see how it sounds. Video, the latest entrant to that is a tool called Sora from OpenAI. And if you've been paying any attention to the interwebs, some of this stuff is that Sora has put out is magnificent. A simple prompt like, show me a lady walking in the streets of Tokyo, and it takes that one prompt and makes a 1 minute video that you would be hard pressed to say is fake. And this lady doesn't exist anywhere in the world. She was just made up by the AI on the spot. And the physics of it, the layering of the hair, the clothes, all of that looks absolutely spot on. Of course, once you start looking a little bit closer, you find out she's got 6 fingers instead of five, stuff like that. But that's all AI. All of them do that. And then there are some specific ones like Tome does slide decks. That last one, Replica, that's an AI that's used for companionship and was a subject of a study recently around a university where 1,000 students were surveyed on their use of Replica. And the mental health kind of considerations around using an AI for companionship were studied, and the results were fairly mind-blowing. So I encourage you to go look that study up if you can, and feel free to hit me up, and I can hit you with the link for the study. Um, I'm kind of basing the way that use cases of AI around what EDUCAUSE, which is the Higher Education IT Consortium, they kind of try to frame it in 4 different ways. You kind of use it for dreaming, so it helps you think. You kind of use it for drudgery to lighten your load. Design, especially for instructors, building your content, right? And then development, advancing your work, helping you think about how to get your work done. So use case one, simple one, you use AI tools instead of Google search. We recently had a DDoS attack here fairly, in the last month or so. And when the emails came out to you, of course, you could go out to Google and search what a DDoS attack is, and it would give you a bunch of links that would try and explain what DDoS is. But a lot of these tools now the AI tools, that is, if you put that question in, you'll get a fairly good answer. So let me try that one, right? Let me go to ChatGPT 4 here, and this is the paid version of ChatGPT. If I go here, the unpaid version is 3.5. But I'm not a peasant. I'm just kidding. The GPT-4 part of it is actually fairly powerful, so I'm going to experiment with that here. What is a DDoS attack? And GPT tries to answer back on a word, phrase by phrase basis. It tries to give you answers as it is thinking, whereas a couple of the other tools kind of just plop the entire text of the answer down. I like the way that this one interacts with me. A fairly short answer, it tries and tells you what's going on. But if I know more about it, if I know more about the attack, but I want to know more about how the attack is going on, I say, hey, but this seems to be targeting our DNS servers. And then it explains to you, what exactly an attack on the DNS servers looks like and what the steps could be, right? Look at that. It's even going beyond that and saying, here are some steps to mitigate it. And if you look at some of the answers, it actually then says what we did at OIT to mitigate the attack that was going on. Very interesting. It also contextualizes it very well. Now, it knows me because I've been kind of interacting with it on a long time basis. And so it knows that I'm going to understand certain words and tries to make sure that it is conversing to me in that context. Explain the Socratic method to me. That's a simple enough one. Explain And it's interesting because like I said, I've been doing this presentation quite often. And this question is a fairly regular one that I put to it. I've never got the same answer back, ever. It starts off, sometimes in a very whimsical way, but sometimes now, for example, it's doing it in a very bullet point fashion. It goes to what Mimi says, which is, AI detection is kind of hard, and especially when it fluctuates between answers to the same prompt, essentially. But say, I am whimsical, so I say, explain the above in the style of Bill from Bill and Ted. And it does so, right? I mean, this is one of the best ways that we can see how AI, generative AI tools really contextualize and make sure that they answer you in the form that you want it answered. Instead of writing Bill from Bill and Ted, I could say that I'm a 15-year-old and explain all of this to me in a form that a 15-year-old would understand. Or I could say that I'm from Senegal and this is how I'm going to understand it. So it tries to contextualize based on its knowledge base. Um, Explain complex ideas. Explain the Monty Hall problem to me. That is a statistical problem that came from the Let's Make a Deal show, right? But I'm from India. I've never been here in the United States back when Let's Make a Deal was such a big deal. So what if I don't know about the show? And so it'll try and explain to you, okay, in the context of the fact that you don't know anything about the show, here's what the problem looks like. Uh, Simple things like I'm an average voter in South Carolina, explain why manufacturing industries are important. Or like my son just now, if he's not interested in college, but I still want to explain to him why differential equations are important in life. These kinds of tools are awesome. Figure that out. I'm going to actually put that question in and see how it deals with that one. And I'm going to go to Gemini, which is Google's version of an AI tool, generative AI tool. And this I'm just going to write, my son is 14, how to explain why differential equations are important. Gemini, this is Gemini Advanced, which is the paid version of Gemini. Uh, like I mentioned, my credit card statement is terrible right now. There's at least 6 AI tools that I pay for on a monthly basis. Yes, this is bad. My wife does not know this. So explains fairly well, and it tries to make sure that it's contextualizing it. Start with change in rates, connect rates to equations, show real world applications, keep it engaging. What a great last point, right? Especially when we're talking to 14-year-olds. Um, get ideas on almost any topic. I've been here a CIO now for about 14 months, and if Lauren suddenly decides to ask me, George, what have you done lately? And I've been dealing with day-to-day stuff so much that I'm not keeping a log of what I've done lately. So I go and ask, hey, what would a CIO have done lately? And I did this, by the way, a couple of times. And man, it tells me stuff that I've done, which there's no way would know why, because most CIOs kind of do the same thing, right? And so then I can say, oh yeah, yeah, I did do that thing. Let me write that down in a more what do you call a complete fashion. So I'm almost never starting any of my projects, my writing projects, from a blank slate. I started with a prompt from one of the generative AI tools, and then I use that prompt to build out exactly what I'm trying to say. I used that last one fairly recently because I'm trying to advocate for a IT trainer here. So let me put that in there in a tool called Tome. Tome is a slide deck, and I already tried that once before, but let me show it to you how it works. Generate a presentation. What's your presentation about? I'm a CIO at a community college. I'll be presenting to our cabinet about the need to hire an IT trainer on our staff. Put together a slide deck for me with appropriate icons and images for pushing this case. Also put in some numbers about salary. And I say generate outline. It puts together about 5 or 6 different outlines, but you can choose one and then say, okay, that looks good. Generate a presentation. And it starts creating a slide deck. Now, you know, really all these generative AI tools, they don't know much about how humans consume presentations yet, right? So it's going to start with very dense, slide decks. which all of us know it's a recipe for disaster, especially when you're talking to our cabinet. Sorry, Larry. But in general, what you want to try and do is make sure that you take that as a starting point and then work forward. But let's look at what it did, right? So first, and it's got a not a blind person, but a person with closed eyes working in the computer. And look at those hands. See how generative AI works with those hands? Not very cool, right? That's a great tell for an artificially generated image. But let's look at the first one. Introduction, need to hire an IT trainer. Would I take this and present this straight in front of cabinet? Probably not. What I'm going to do is say, okay, I like the structure and I like some of the words, but I'm going to work my own style and my own voice into this. It actually takes the time for going out and saying benefits, the challenges that are there right now, and what the role would be. And look at that; it actually went out and pulled in entry, mid, and senior level salaries from the internet. Puts in a good-looking chart. Everybody likes charts, so put that in there. You might not use this chart, but now suddenly the idea of a chart is introduced into your brain, and so you start looking for a good enough chart to put in there. Put in the proposed budget, and there's a start for you. So you're not starting from a blank slate, you're starting from a something that is already there. Get ideas on almost any topic on your personal life, by the way. This is awesome. We recently just planned an entire trip to Costa Rica by me essentially putting that into Google Gemini and saying, hey, I want to go to Costa Rica. Here's what my family size looks like. We like to hike. I don't mind driving. And, we're going for 7 days. And boom, it just put out a 7-day itinerary. I can say, I don't like day 6 too much because that's too much hiking. And it'll change that out and say, I want to do something else there. My son actually used that second prompt recently, saying that he wanted to do a 5K. And so then it asks questions like, okay, are you on the couch? Okay, then, where do we start from there as far as getting to a 5K? Designing. Imagine if somebody came into this college right before affirmation and said, that they've been tasked with the idea of being in charge of reaffirmation from SAC-COC. Well, they can go to a ChatGPT like 2 and say, hey, what's my first step? And ChatGPT will direct them to the SAC-COC website, read the SAC-COC website, the handbook, and say, here are your first steps. That's better than having an onboarding document. I don't know about you. That feels really cool. You can also now in ChatGPT's got a feature, and here I'm going to go back there. It's got a feature called Create a GPT. And GPTs are essentially almost like assistants, and you can see various versions of assistants created by folks all around the place. But I'm going to create one. And in this case, it's going to run me through what's called a wizard. And I'm going to put in these words. I'm a CIO at a community college. I need an assistant for helping with creating documents, memos, emails, etc. And it starts making what's called a GPT assistant for me. That's fine. I don't know why it needs to create a profile picture, by the way, but hey, it makes me feel good, so why not, right? Oh, and one of the things about GPT assistants, you can actually share these with other folks inside your college or those who have paid versions of ChatGPT. So you can both kind of relate to the same assistant. Do you like it? Yeah, why not? Yeah. Mostly contracts, memos to cabinet. What else can I do? Emails to the college regarding incidents, etc. So when that DDoS attack happened about a month ago, guess how I made that email up to send it to y'all? I used ChatGPT and said, here's what happened. I'd like you to compose an email saying that here's what happened and how we're dealing with it. and put in all the requisite words about, here's the mitigation strategies we're doing. And it put back an email. I worked with that email, and that's what we sent to you finally. And frankly, that's one of the fastest ways to get communication done nowadays, because writing email takes real thought when we're putting out something like that as far as an incident is concerned. And now this makes it a lot more easier, so that I'm actually using my brain cycles in the right way, as opposed to writing it from scratch. Would you like the system to use any? No, no, not really. And it creates one. So the preview is on the right. So here I can say, make me an email to send to the college about DDoS, ongoing DDoS attack. Seems familiar? And then when we actually solve it, I say, hey, this is what we use to solve it. Make me an email to send out the all clear. And then it puts out the all clear there. Now, it is not going to send the email for you, right? I mean, you still have to do all that work yourself, but this is a great start. Um, Design any kind of image you can think of. And I put this one in: an educator in a South Carolina setting, working at a keyboard near a window that looks out onto the low country of South Carolina. And I used a software called Ideogram, but really there's quite a lot of tools out there that can help you do this. In this case, Ideogram generated 4 different images. I didn't specify the gender of the educator. It just decided to do women for all 4 of them. Don't look closely at the fingers. Fingers are always weird. But in general, a very good first step. Distill meeting transcripts and other long documents. This is one of the best use cases of tools like ChatGPT, by the way. That financial aid document, 75-page document that comes out and says, here are all the changes to financial aid. Well, all Amy has to do is chunk that right into Claude or ChatGPT and say, give me the high points. And it gives you the 15 high points that are there in those documents. And really, that's all you need to start off. But then if you want to continually read on into it, you can query more about it and say, hey, point number 15 talks about this. Tell me more about that. And it'll go back into the document and give you a much better summary. I really like the idea of Zoom meeting transcripts. For example, this meeting is getting recorded right now. The transcript can be put into something like a ChatGPT or a Claude. And then you can say, hey, where's my name mentioned in there? Because I want to know if in a meeting like this, they assign me any to-do items. And it does a great job of telling you that. Be an armchair data scientist. One of the best ways to use this is especially for non-sensitive data, and where you can use things like, okay, here's survey data about something. Upload that Excel file into any one of Claude or ChatGPT, and it will tell you here's what the numbers look like as far as the surveys. Far less analysis needed from your side. Would you take that analysis though and go with it? No, what you would do is go back into that CSV, spot check some of that and say, hey, does this look right or not? For the sake of time, I'm not going to run through a analysis right now, but if we do have time, I'll jump into that later. So once again, here's a slide deck with all the names of all the various tools where you can test them. We'll try and send out the slide. I believe we're going to try and send this out, Rachel, at some point, and you can click through them to actually find out all these tools. There's a video over here in the slide deck. It's about how Moderna actually has adopted a lot of the OpenAI tools within their entire organization, and especially the concept of sharing all those GPT assistants around their company. I liked one of them where basically they used the legal assistant to say, hey, when we're doing legal work around any of our clinical trials, how can we write this down in a more standardized fashion? And it basically takes over the idea of legal writing for a company like that. Oops, sorry. This is one of the books that I mentioned there in the chat. It's Co-Intelligence by Ethan Malik. He's a great follow. on LinkedIn or even on a Substack. I would highly recommend it if you are an educator looking to understand more about generative AI tools. And that's it. Any questions? I'm open for that.
Oh, thank you, George. Yes, we did have a couple of questions come in through the Q&A. The first one is a question from Pam. Any possibility to have access to use Fathom AI Note Taker for those of us that take meeting minutes?
I think that's essentially up to you and your budget line at that point. Some of these tools, though, as we look at the terms and conditions, OIT may have to say no, depending on what they do with the data. But at least for experimentation, I'd say that it's you can start off with it and then say, okay, I want to do a license of it, and you can talk with OIT and procurement about that.
Wonderful, thank you. And then two questions really centered around when you were using ChatGPT-4. Amber asked first, how do you know that the information/response is accurate?
And it depends upon the kind of question you're asking. If you're asking something that's a lot more closed-ended, like what's the capital of I don't know, Turkey or something like that, it's a lot more easier to find out whether that response is accurate. If you're asking it to kind of distill that 75-page document into 15 points, well, it really is up to you to figure that out whether that's accurate. And one of the ways that I've seen people do that is to spot check out of the 15, go up to 0.4 and see whether this actually, matches up with that 75-page document. But you can also ask it for citations. Hey, where did you get 0.4 from? Which page is it from? And it'll point to the page and say, this is where I got it from, and here's how I distilled it. But really, in the end, the way that you want to work with these tools is to verify. Almost never should you have to trust it.
And that was Amber's follow-up question too. Do you always trust
No.
ChatGPT for
I mean,
response?
think about it. When I tried to do that email, I didn't take I'm sending that email out to 1,400 people. There's no way I'm sending something out, without actually fact checking it. One way I've heard of these kinds of tools is to consider tools like ChatGPT, for example, as your 14-year-old nephew who's your intern. He's a bright kid. He knows, he's got a ton of knowledge in his head, but he's also a little bit of a fool, in that he'll do whatever the heck he wants without you actually guiding him. So if you're taking his help, yes, take it, but always cross-check it and make sure that it's correct before actually pushing it.